Good afternoon, Tom.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Thank you, thank you. The logo gives us away, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a story behind the symbol. The name Wyman echoes in the halls. I never had the opportunity to meet your father, George, but it seemed that it was his brainchild that ultimately got things started in our community.
Well, Dr. George, as we used to call him, to keep him straight from Dr. Tom, arrived in Peoria after World War II in 1945. Father practiced largely as a soloist all that time until I joined him in 1977. In 1980-81, Dr. Sisher joined us. After that, in about 1985, Dr. Laguris joined us. After that, Dr. Safran, a pediatric ophthalmologist, joined us. We basically were adding subspecialists to cover all the subspecialties in ophthalmology, which is what we have now, largely. It's interesting because what we were originally the George J. Wyman practice.
Right.
Then we became Wyman Eye Associates.
Right.
And then when Steve Sisher joined us, he in some ways he was critical because we were a family practice at that point, father-son,
Right.
and he was the first non-family member to join. So we added him. So we became Wyman Sisher Eye Associates. Then Dr. Laguris came over the horizon and they said, well, we can't call ourselves Wyman Sisher Laguris. We're going to start to sound like an attorney or an accounting firm. So we went to the generic name of Illinois Eye Center.
What would Dr. George think today if he was walking around these halls and looking at how we were providing care?
Well, he'd walk in the door and he'd look at his picture and he'd say, take that down. And then he'd want to know what the mortgage was.
Okay, so nothing would have changed.
Not much would have changed.
But elements of his devotion to patients and quality care provisions and all of those things, those obviously have persisted, and he'd be proud that his name lives on that way.
Yeah, I think, and I would second his thought in that regard. I mean, it's been really gratifying to me to find you, when I say you included, but pretty much all of our MDs, and they're really interested in the patient's story. It's not just, oh, here's another set of eyes to take care of. I mean, it's attached to an individual, and we want to know what their needs, concerns are. I mean, you really need to understand that if you're going to provide good, responsive care.
One of the things that I remember actually when I came to the practice, you took me on my first tour of the locations. One was at Proctor, one was Hamilton was the main office, and we had a business office on Sheridan. When we were at the Proctor location, I remember you looking out and saying, one of these days, it'd be nice if we could consolidate and have a hub that can be larger, more technologically advanced.
We knew we wanted to consolidate on one site. For one, for logistical reasons, and two, we felt it'd be much better to be able to, how do I want to put this, what we used to call curbside consultations. Sure. If you said, come take a look at this patient, it was much better to have everybody on one site. And but we didn't get to a critical mass of practitioners. Then we finally got to that point, and this building was put up in 2007, I think.
Right, 2007 January.
Right. And then we've had the good fortune of having the community support that we've had, and actually the practice has grown beyond the Peoria area. We're actually getting patients beyond the Tri-County area. So as we added more practitioners, we've actually outgrown this site. So now the practice, as you well know, is on 3 sites. We have an office in Washington or East Peoria. It's right on the edge of that. And one in Pekin. So, and to this day, I guess.
We walk in the door, usually in the physician entrance in the back, there is a placard that says that our goal and our mission is to preserve eye health through all stages of life. I do think about that. It's probably more in my subconscious when I'm interacting with someone in the room who has an issue. I want to be sure that this person doesn't just get affected today or that day, but also going forward. What I've done impacts them going forward. This is something that you believed and brought into our consciousness early on. So can you speak a little bit to the mission of the Illinois Eye Center and how you see it in practice today?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about ophthalmology is the eye is the smallest organ system in the body, and yet the scope of ophthalmology is probably the broadest of all specialties. It really goes from cradle to grave, or thereabouts. And if you start to think about incidence of some of the diseases we deal with, let's take, for instance, glaucoma. Your chances of getting glaucoma across a lifetime without any risks is probably about 5%. Your chances of getting macular degeneration, maybe 10%, 12%.
Right.
And if your chances of getting some other retinal problem, you add all those things together, it's always something.
Right.
So with that in mind, we realized that we needed people in all these subspecialties and their expertise and their prodding, actually, to remind us that, in fact, we need the next generation of OCT, the next generation of retinal scanner, the next generation of laser. What are we on, our third or fourth laser for LASIK?
Fourth.
As we were saying, the technological wheel keeps turning, and if you don't stay with it, you're going to be behind. So.
Very true.